Hello, and welcome to our recurring learning webinar series. This week's webinar is going to be on understanding reports. We'll get started here momentarily. I just want to allow a few more moments for those who have registered but not yet joined to join, and we'll get started here soon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for joining our webinar on understanding reports. In today's webinar, we are going to focus on report templates, how to build a report. We'll do that many times, so by the end of today's webinar, you'll be a semi-pro, if not a professional, on how to create a report. And we're also going to look at samples of our most common reports here at Link to Feed, so that you can see what they look like. After today's webinar, I do truly encourage you to look at past videos or today's video. You'll find a lot of content there. And also to go back and look at those reports in your own time. Although we'll be looking at each sample today, we won't have time to dive into every single bit of data that each report renders. This is going to focus on the reports in the US. So if you have any questions on the Canadian reports, like the hunger count report, we do ask that you reach out to Food Banks Canada. And I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Before I log in, I want to point out that I am on a testing server. I can tell that because I can see here, this is the testing server showing. And I'm going to get logged in with a username and a password. The username should be your email address. We do encourage that this be a real email address, as that will be the only way that you'll be able to use the I forgot my password, as this is going to send a password reset link to this email address. And then there also is the password here, which should be a minimum of 8 characters, including 1 uppercase letter and 1 lowercase letter, 1 number and 1 special character. So I'm going to go ahead and get logged in here. And now we are looking at the secondary login screen. The secondary login screen is not something that everyone will see, but if you are a network admin or a user that has access to more than one location, you will see the secondary login screen. This is your chance to log in to any specific agency or the network that you're wanting to focus on at that time. And you can go ahead and press continue here. And then we have our application settings page. This is going to show you all of the applications that your network has access to. Your page may look a little bit different than what you're seeing here, and that's totally okay. But just know that what you see at the top are the things that you have access to. And if I scroll down to the bottom, these are the other things that Link to Feed offers that you may want to use or take advantage of in the future. We're going to be focusing today on case management reports. So I'm going to go ahead and touch on case management. And I am going to start by going into the report section here on the left menu bar. So when I touch reports, I'll have new reports and we'll spend a lot of time in here. Reports inbox will also spend a lot of time in here. We're going to start off with report templates. We also have recurring reports, organization groups, which allows you to group your organizations by specific characteristics. So maybe you have a combination of schools, religious organizations, church or soup kitchens, things of that nature, and you want to be able to run a report based on that identifier. So the organization groups allows you to do that, and then data groups, which would be things like age bracket and so on. But we're going to start off here in report templates, and we'll talk about exactly what that is. So when you are creating a report, which we will do here very soon, but when you are creating a report, you're going to build that report from scratch. What it is that you're looking for, from what organizations, during which time period, what are the sections or the individual pieces of data that you want, so on and so forth. Once you run that report, you're going to simply get the data from it. Now, if at a later point in time you decide, you know what, that report I ran last week was almost perfect, but I forgot to include this piece of data, you would essentially have to recreate that report unless you created a template. And so a template allows you to go through that same process of building a report from scratch, but instead of running the report right away, you're going to you're going to save that report as a template. That means that you can go back into the template, you can run the report from the template, or make any edits or changes or additions. So I've got a couple of templates here. I've got my testing 123 template, very creatively named, and I've got my webinar FNS 191 template here as well. With each one of these, I have the ability to edit, the ability to create the report, which means that you're going to run it. If this template is no longer of use to you, you can delete it. So this is a template that I have created ahead of time, and I'll be showing you time and time again how you can create this template. But I can come in here and edit the template. So by touching the edit pencil, it's going to take me to this page that shows me everything that this report is rendering. And maybe I no longer need to see this particular agency, the Kids Cafe agency. So I can delete this and I can save the template. Now that means when I click the edit button again, and I come back into this report, that Kids Cafe agency is not going to show up because I have edited the report. Now, from this template, I can also run the report. So 9 times out of 10, if you're going to run something from a template, we're going to go ahead and press the Create Report button. It's still going to show you the makeup of the report. If nothing else changes, perhaps the date will change, so I can change what that date range is for this specific report, and then I can make any minor tweaks or changes. Now, the thing that I want to point out to you here is that the changes that you make when you run a report do not stick as if you were to edit the template. So I'm going to remove agency F, which is our bulk and generic agency. I'm just going to remove that, and I can create this report. It's going to show up in my reports inbox and it's going to be available here. Now, when I go back to my report templates and I go back to edit, that agency F bulk and generic is still showing up on my template. This is my master. So I can only affect this moving forward if I edit the template itself. But whenever you run the report, you can make minor tweaks or changes or edits for that specific one that you are running, which will not affect the way the template looks moving forward. Are there any questions on a report template or why we might use it or how it works? All right. So what we are going to do now is go in and build a report together. It's going to show you the process that you will take to build a report. And we're going to do this several times today. So I'm going to start off with the statistics report because it is by far our most comprehensive report. I'm going to start off building reports very slowly and showing you each section that you need to fill out. And towards the end, we'll be able to breeze by the creation of a report. So in order to create a new report, I'm going to touch, of course, new report. And this is going to show me all of the reports that Link to Feed has to offer. If you see more or less reports available in your network, that is okay. If you see something here that you don't have available in your network, please reach out to either your account manager or support to get that turned on if it's something that you feel would be helpful for you. These are in alphabetical order, so I'm going to start off with the statistics report. Again, this is our most comprehensive report. The only option I have here is to create a new report. Once you learn how to do the stats report, you essentially know how to do any report in Link2Feed. That's another reason I like to start here. It has the most information to fill out, and you'll notice that the rest of them are quite simple as compared to the statistics report. So first I'm going to title the report. And I can name this whatever I want to name it, whether I just call it stat report or whether I say monthly revenue report, whatever it is that you are looking for, you can go ahead and title it that. The next section here is asking me, who am I sharing this report with? And so they're speaking specifically to the results of the report. I can say that this report is just for me. I just need to run this report on a monthly basis, or I'm just running this once and no one else needs to see the data. I can say that it is for me and users at the following organizations. So that is to say that I will get to see the results as well as any users at the organizations that I choose. Something to keep in mind with this is that, of course, you will need the reporting role in order to access any reporting features. So although I have chosen 2 organizations here, only those with the reporting role at these organizations would have access to the results. And then, of course, I can say me and the following users, and that is going to be the specific users that you want to run a report or share the report with. If someone is sharing a report with you, you will see that report in the report inbox section. But for the purpose of training, we'll leave it with just me. Next, we're going to choose for the following cycle. This is asking what is the date range for which you need to retrieve the data. By default, only once is selected. I can choose recurring as well. So if I choose recurring, I'm going to choose how frequently I want this report to occur, whether that be weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually or yearly. And I can choose relative dates. Generally speaking, if I'm doing a monthly report, I want to see last month. But of course, you can mix this up if you're looking for something a little different. And you're going to choose the start date. For the sake of training, I'm going to leave this at only once. I do still have some relative dates here. So if this is a once only report and I just want to see what happened in my system yesterday or what happened last month, I can do that. Or I can choose the what I choose options here, where I'm going to do a custom date range. Yes, this webinar will be available recorded later on YouTube. Next, I'll choose the organizations, and this is asking me what organizations data do I need for this report. I can choose my organizations by their name. I can choose them by the county, by the city, by their tag, and that goes back into the organization groups that we talked about earlier. And I can choose them by the group. So I can also make sure that if there is an organization that is inactive, maybe I'm looking at historical data, I can show the inactive organizations here. You'll see these tools in a few different sections. So I can select all, I can deselect all, or maybe I'm interested in seeing all but my agency D. I can still come in here and deselect. I can type to get exactly what I'm looking for and have that show up. Then it's going to show me or ask me how I want to see my data, basically if it's aggregated or not. So I want to see one row per their organization, meaning that each one of these organizations will appear on their own row with totals. Or do I want to see all of this information in one group total, not being able to necessarily decipher what numbers came from which organization? I can choose to include anonymous visits or not. And then I'm going to choose my program types. So when a program is created in Link2Feed, What you see is the program name. That might be CSFP or TFAP or Pantry or whatever the case may be. But each one of those programs also has a program type in the back end. That program type is very important because that is what you report from. So of course, if you're creating a TFAP program, you're going to want to give it the TFAP type. If you're creating a SNAP or a Pantry program, you're going to want to either type it appropriately or have a note, whether it be mental or physical, of what type this program is so that you know how to report on that program in the future. I can select all here as well, or if I only want to see the numbers from a specific report, then I want to make sure to choose only that program type. And then lastly here, I have sections, and this is what makes the statistics report so comprehensive. Right now, everything is collapsed, but I can expand everything here as well. And it's bringing or splitting everything up into different categories here. So for instance, with age group, I can go ahead and touch this caret and expand. And maybe I am interested in the duplicated age group of individuals. If I'm looking at ethnicity, I can choose how I want to see that ethnicity, and I can truly build the statistics report to show exactly what it is that I am interested in. So I'll pause here for a moment to allow you to see everything. I am going to touch the select all so that everything expands. The report that we're getting ready to look at does show a select all, and I believe I did it for the past 6 months so that we would have a lot of data to look at. But 9 times out of 10, if none of the other reports are giving you what you're looking for, you can find it or create it with the statistics report. So if you're playing around with the statistics report, you're trying to find very specific information, I highly recommend creating a template of it. You'll create beautiful masterpieces and you might just want to tweak it or edit it later on, and you'll definitely appreciate having that template. Outside of selecting all, I'm going to deselect all. Maybe you want to build a report that is just based around the client, and it's going to only select those client-specific options, or the household, or per the visit. Once you have built your report, everything from the title and moving all the way down to the sections, you're going to have a few options. Of course, you can cancel if you've opened this up by mistake. I can save this as a template, which is where we started today's webinar. If you save it as a template, it will not run the report. It will simply be in your template inbox, to which you can then go and edit it for future use cases or run it whenever you would like. You can also create this report. If I touch the Create Report button now, it's going to take us into the report inbox, and it's going to run the report based on what I have selected here. But I will not be able to go back to this report and make edits and tweaks. Moving forward, whatever I have done is the report that I have. Keep in mind, though, that this could be a one-time report or a recurring report. So if I have decided that I want to see a report every month showing me last month's data and visits, then whatever I do when I create this report, that is the information that is going to pull month over month without the ability to edit it. So I'm not going to touch the Create Report button simply because I already have one that I've created ahead of time, but I'm going to go into the report inbox here. And we are going to look for the webinar stats report. Here it is. I can either open the report by touching the hyperlink here, which is the title, or I can touch the little blue graph button here to view it. So as this report loads, it's going to show us a lot of information. I did, when I ran this report previously, select all on that sections. So it's very long. We can see how tiny this little bar is and how much information we can glean from this report. And you could get very weary of scrolling, which is why I love the report content section here. It essentially is a interactable table of contents. So as opposed to scrolling for as long as it may take to get what you need here, I can go to exactly what I want and notice the report skipping around to take me to that section. Now, of course, if you are running a very specific statistics report, you won't have as many sections because you probably won't be selecting all in that bottom section. It'll just be the few sections that you select. So a few things that I want to point out to you here on this report is that most sections are going to give you a table. That section, if I expand my tools, can be copied, converted to a CSV. I can see them in a PDF or I can print them. If the section was very long from left to right, I could enable scrolling, which will give me a bar down at the bottom to scroll from left to right. That same section is also going to give you a donut chart as well as the bar graph. And if you're interested in these tables or these images, we can convert those to PNGs. I can do the same thing for each section. So I can expand my tools to copy this table or convert to a CSV. And each time you see a graph or image, you'll be able to convert those into pictures. If I'm looking at a donut chart and I see these the key or the legend up top, this is going to be true for any report that you run. You can manipulate this data to show what it is that you need to show or to kind of show the better picture. So maybe for what I'm looking for, I don't want to include unknown and anonymous. I can simply touch those colors and it's going to take the data and show me the percentages minus those particular options. And so I can, of course, touch that again to have them show back up. And then at the very, very top, if you want the entire report, I can also get this in print view or show this in an Excel. CSV is essentially a reduced version of Excel. So if you have Microsoft Excel, it's going to show up in Excel. It's not going to have all of the tools and bells and whistles that you would have in a traditional, I believe it's XLX, but you'll be able to get all of that information there. And from Excel, of course, manipulate the data, run whatever reports or use whatever formulas you need to get the totals that you need. Any questions on the statistics report before we move forward?
Super quick question. Can you, I think I understand what duplicated versus unduplicated means, but can you describe that so I make sure I understand that correctly?
Sure. The best way to describe duplicated versus unique would be that duplicated is going to focus on the visits, whereas unique is going to focus on the individual. So let's see if we keep it very simple with numbers, we have 3 visits, but the visits are made up of 2 people. One person visited once and the second person visited twice. On a duplicated report, it's going to show the 3 visits. On a unique report, it's going to show 2, one person and person A and person B. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, we'll be looking at a lot more reports that show duplicated versus unique, but the big question is, when you're looking at your data, are you interested in seeing how many visits there were to a particular program or whatever the case may be? 500 visits happened. Or do you want to know 300 people came and some of them came more than once for a total of 500? And so maybe you want to see both of those numbers, but visits or duplicate is going to show repeat clients as simply visits, whereas individual or unique is going to show the individuals, not showing you if that person came 2 or 3 or 4 times.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions on the statistics report before we move forward? All right, well, congratulations. We have made it through our most comprehensive report, and we are now going to move on to the agency report. This was formerly known as the pantry report, does the same exact thing. We just changed the name so that it would be more inclusive to our client base. So again, to create a new report, I'm going to touch reports here and go to new report. And the agency report in alphabetical order is the first one. When I create this report, I'm going to title the report. I am going to, and here's a lovely example of why I love templates. If I did not catch this typo and I went all the way down to the bottom and created the report, every single time I looked at that report, it would show this way. If I created this as a template, I could go into the template and edit my typo very quickly and not have to deal with it anymore. You're going to see when we get to the reports inbox that there is one report that has that very common typo of mine with the capital E after report, I believe. This is the agency report. If you're ever curious as to which report you've run, it's always going to be at the top of the screen here. It's also going to show in this first section. So we're going to title the report. We're going to choose who we're sharing it with. Is this report just for you? Is this for you and people at certain organizations? Or is this for you and very specific people? Keeping in mind that whether you choose option B or C here, the people that you share it with must have the reporting role in order to see the results of that report. Next, we're going to choose the cycle, if it's a one-time report or a recurring report, and then the dates there. So I can choose what I choose for a customized date range or use the relative dates for whatever it is that I may be looking for. Which organization's data do I want to pull? Do I want all of them or do I want just specific ones? Do I need to show inactive because I need to get some historical data from an agency that is no longer active? And then lastly, the program types. So you may notice that all of the sections that we're going over here were available in the statistics report. The only thing we're missing here is sections, and the reason for that is because the agency report is a canned report. It's going to render the same data no matter what. So I can choose all of my program types or just one of my program types, depending on what it is that I'm looking for. But once again, once you learn how to set up your statistics report, you're in a good place. You can set up any of your reports here. So I can choose to save this as a template or create the report right here and now. If I create the report right now, it's going to take us to the report inbox. But of course, I have an agency report already saved. I just need to put my eyes on it. There it is. And I'm going to go ahead and touch the hyperlink here. This is going to open me up to the results. So the agency report is not going to have anywhere near as much information as the possibilities of the statistics report if you were to select all, but it is very specific things. This agency report is usually what most food banks need to report on, and it's just so it's a canned report. So I'm going to open up my contents and we're going to go over what those sections are. That is the age group of individuals duplicated, the age group of individuals unique, and then the households and individuals served duplicated, households or individuals served unique. So it's just 4 sections here. The first section has a couple of graphs. The same logic applies. Oh my goodness, there have been a lot of anonymous visits here. I'm going to go ahead and take those out so that I can see what it looks like when I exclude my anonymous visits. I can convert these into pictures. I can open up my tools and create an Excel sheet for this or copy this information. Perhaps I'm using Google Sheets. I can copy and paste it into Google Sheets. And I have all of my information here. Any questions on the agency report before we move forward? All right, one other thing that I want to point out here is when you're looking at the results from a report, it's going to show you the title of the report up top. And if you've paid very close attention, it's going to even show you what the criteria was for this report. So this may be very helpful to you if you weren't working off of a template and you're curious what was the original report set up as, you'll be able to see that here. So we're going to go back into reports in new report, and we're going to move on to the interactive household report. I love this report. It's fun to play with. So I'm going to start to speed up the process on setting up reports now. We know that we can title this report. We can choose who we are sharing it with, either just for yourself, organizations, or users. Is this a one-time or recurring report? And what are the dates associated with that? Which organizations do we want to get the data for, and do we want to show inactive, and the program types. So this is the exact same setup as the agency report, but the interactive report, of course, is going to render different results. Save it as a template to go back for future use, or create the report to see it show up immediately in the reports inbox. But I'm going to go ahead into the report inbox now. and we are going to look for the interactive report. Here it is. This report is great because it allows you to pivot the information as you scroll down to get exactly what it is that you are looking for. So the same logic applies in that I can include or exclude information based on this information here, but I can also pivot this information. And what that means is that if I, let's say, pivot 60 plus, maybe I am looking specifically for seniors because I'm getting ready to try and apply for a grant for seniors. So if I pivot this information for seniors, it's going to show me 100% in this top section here for seniors, but then everything beneath is going to be for seniors. So now that I have pivoted this data for seniors, it's looking at the individual city. It's only choosing the city for the data for seniors. So maybe I am only interested for the seniors in Chicago because that's what my grant is for. I can pivot this information once again. We've got another 100%. But now it's going to go into more as far as the county. And I can continue to pivot and pivot, knowing that each section is going to be narrowed down based on what it is that I am looking for. So you can play with this report and get so much information just depending on how you pivot it. If you've pivoted too far or you've made a mistake, I can come up here and delete that last pivot that I did, or I can remove all to get my results back to everything. But it is so-called the interactive report because you can interact with it and get exactly what it is that you're looking for. I need to look at my seniors in this county of this city to get the grant funding that I need. Any questions on the interactive household report? All right, we're going to move into the time series report next. So I'm going to go back into reports and new report. And I'm going to look for the time series report, which is here. And we've seen this before. I can title my report. I can choose who I am sharing it with. Is it just for me, specific organizations, or individual users? Is this a one-time report, recurring report, and what are the dates associated with it? Which organizations do I want to pull this data from? And what are the program types? From program types and up, we have seen all of this before. This time series report is going to ask us a couple more questions. So what the time series report does is shows you snapshots in time per the time range that you choose. So let's say that I wanted to look at the last 6 months, for instance. During the last 6 months, where do I want to see that snapshot? Do I want to see each month within the last 6 months, each week within the last 6 months, each day within the last 6 months? If it were an annual report, then you might want to choose each month. If this report were over the past 5 years, maybe you want a snapshot at every year. So you get to choose what this looks like. I think for the canned report, I did it for every 6 months, or I think I might have done it for every quarter with months in between. And then you're going to choose which of the following report sections you want. So notice that these are checkboxes. That means that I can choose more than one. Unlike up here, I have radio buttons. The little circles means I'm choosing only one. So in this section, I can choose the served, individuals, duplicated here. But if I choose the age group, we're going to have another section show up and it wants to know what data specifically. So what is the age group here that I am looking for? So if I chose more than one section here, we're going to see a line plot graph, and each line would be represented by a different color. I believe on the sample that I have, I only chose one section here, which I believe I did households served duplicated. But I'm going to go ahead and go into reports and report inbox, and we will look for our sample time series report. There it is. There it is. And that's the one I have a typo on. Could have saved myself a lot of trouble. Every time I look at it, I go, grr, I should have made a template. But the data's still good. So we'll go ahead and touch that. And it's going to show us the time period across the bottom. So we have from October till April. And then these individual markers here are our snapshots. So I can hover over and it's going to tell me exactly what that is. So it was 4 duplicated in November, 3 in December, 18 in January, big month, 6 in February, 4 in March, and then 0 in April. So it's going to basically break down what your trends look like year over year, month over month, day over day, week over week. And if you want to compare more than one thing, you would simply select more than one in that section, and that's where you would see different color lines. Any questions on the time series report before we move forward? All right. Next, we're going to move to the heat map report. So I'll go back into reports and choose new report here. And I am going to choose the heat map report. And we're very familiar with this setup by now. We can title it, choose who we are sharing it with or if we're sharing it, one time recurring or the date range, which organizations are we interested in, and the program types. All of this we've seen before. There are a couple more things that are going to make the heat map report unique. So it's going to ask us to show data for. Now these are radio buttons, so I'm only going to be able to select one of them. If I choose age groups, it's going to ask for the specific age group. And if I choose gender, it's going to ask me for that specific gender identity. But if I'm going with households served or employment, these are just going to be more canned. The other thing I have here is to show a marker for each organization on the heat map report. I definitely recommend this. Essentially what that means is we're getting ready to look at a map that is powered by Google. And if we select this option, there's going to be a cute little icon, a little house that represents each one of your locations. So we're going to be able to see where the density is on the map compared to the locations of our agencies. So if I create this report, that's going to take me to report inbox. And let's look at our heat map report here. Now, as I mentioned before, we are on the Link to Feed test site. That means that myself, as well as the other employees of Link to Feed, come here to play around and test. And as some of you may know, Link to Feed has employees spread across Canada and the US and all throughout different cities. The reason I mention that is because when we as employees create organizations, 9 times out of 10, we're going to create that organization with the address that is near to us. And because of that, this report is going to show data all across the country. Now, when you run this report, I'm expecting that you'll have more condensed of a service area and you'll really be able to see something. But what I'm going to do right now is just zoom out some. So if I zoom out enough, I can see that we've got a decent amount of employees that are in the Chicago area. If I zoom out some more, oh, we used to have one in California, but it looks like not, but that's okay. So I'm going to zoom out for a bit here. And what we'll notice is that there are some colors here on the map in certain areas. So white will represent the lowest density and red will represent the highest density. The reason I like to show these organizations here, and I'm going to try to zoom in right on Chicago if I can. Oh, I've gone too far at once. I lost it. There it is. Is because it's going to show you the density that you're seeing is based on the client's address. So it's essentially comparing the client's address to the nearest organization. So if I am looking here, I might notice that there are a decent amount of clients that have an address in what I would say is the Oak Park area. Maybe we want to consider building an agency out this way because it's quite a bit of a drive for them to get to the nearest agency. It also looks like this agency is very well placed because there are many clients that share this address and the agency looks to be just about in their neighborhood. I also noticed that this agency, Agency D, doesn't seem to have any density of clients around them. So maybe we want to do some outreach in this area and help our clients know that there is help in this area for them. Any questions on the heat map report before we move forward? All right, so I'm going to go into reports and new report. And this time we are focusing on the generic report or the generic program report. So when you are looking at the services tab within your site, there will be many programs perhaps that you have to choose from. Some of them may have dark blue buttons. Some of them may have light blue buttons. Those light blue buttons are what we call generic reports. Essentially, that just means that they are not very strict. They don't follow state criteria such as CSFP, TFAP, things of that nature. So maybe you want to run a report to get the information on your generic reports. Maybe that's an initiative that's very personal to your organization. So I can go ahead and title this report, choose who I'm sharing it with, choose my date range, the organizations, and then this one does have some sections. And so I can choose by the any program type. And then what I'm seeing here, breakfast program, meal program, multi-service program. These are going to be specific to my network. It is asking me which generic programs I am interested in. I can also select all on this. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this report doesn't have a ton of data for us to look at, but it will still show you those sections. So I'm going to go and instead of creating the report, I'm going to go to report and report inbox. And then we'll take a look at our generic report. All right. So we have our any program type. That was one section here. So it's going to show all of the agencies here, and then it's going to show the program types. Multi-service, soup kitchen are the program types. Lots of zeros here. Looks like we're not utilizing generic reports for too much testing at this time, and that's okay. But it looks like agency F does have a couple of generic report data for us. So breakfast programs and bulk recording categories are blank right now. These are program types, and that just means that we're not utilizing those. We also have our meal program. We do have a couple of agencies that have access to the soup kitchen, but it looks like they're not, or none of us at Link to Feed are testing the soup kitchen program, so we've got zeros there. And then the same for multi-service program and snack program. So these essentially are just program types that there are no data on. But just know that in this report, it's going to break it down by the program types. And then we're going to see our totals here. So for all of our agencies, CSFP visit, delivery appointment, mobile pantry visit, and these titles are going to change based on what your programs are. You'll be able to see them broken down by your agency. And then of course, we've got some nice graphs. So it looks like Soup Kitchen is very highly utilized. If I want to see what these things look like minus Soup Kitchen, I can still use that same tool. So it looks like there are a lot of pantry visits as well. But it was kind of difficult to see that until I excluded that Soup Kitchen. All right. So we also have our total visits by program name. So this is going to be the name of the program as opposed to the program type, which some folks find very helpful. And those come with their own graphs as well. Any questions on the generic report before we move forward? All right, moving right along, we're going to go into the monitoring report. I like to think of this as the Big Brother report. And this is the time where I like to make it known that along with the reporting role, you get to choose which report your users have access to. So as a user, I might need the statistics report, I may need the agency report, but I may not need the monitoring report, as that is giving me some detailed information on how the agencies themselves are working. So of course, I can title my report, choose who I'm sharing it with, choose the date range, choose the organizations, and the program types. We've seen this set up before with the agency report, with the interactive household report, and a couple others. And I can either save this as a template for future use, or I can create the report right here and now. So I'm going to go into my report inbox, and I'm going to choose the monitoring report. If my eyes would work, there we go. And this monitoring report is going to give us very specific information about our agencies. It's a way to hold your agencies accountable and make sure that they're keeping the standard that you set for them. So missing data, wonderful news here. It looks like I don't have any missing data across any of my agencies. Backdating, there are a couple instances of backdating at agency A and at agency F, but these numbers aren't too terribly large. I don't think that's much of a concern. Now, you may have some protocols as to when backdating is okay and when it's not okay and how far back you can backdate. So this might be a report that you want to check. In the data integrity section, it's going to go over the didn't ask section or the undisclosed section. So or were there any instances that the client was not asked for their address? No. Housing type? No. Looks like there's 2 instances of duplicates here. And there are 9 instances of not asking for self-identity and a couple others here. So maybe that means that I need to train my users on how to more sensitively ask that question. So if you're noticing trends here, like I see unknown visit reason, this is a really big number at agency A. So maybe there are several users that are struggling with how to ask that question, or maybe there's one user that is just consistently not asking that question. But either way, you've got some options there. Maybe you need to dig a little deeper and figure out why they're not asking the question. Maybe it's as simple as providing them with the script or exactly what you want them to say so that they can ask it in the most sensitive and politically correct way. Maybe you decide as a network that this isn't very important to you, and if your users are struggling with it, you don't mind just turning this field off. But either way, this is going to allow you to see what your users are doing and be able to provide the correction or the training that may be necessary from the report. Any questions on the monitoring report before we move forward?
You mentioned, hi, this is Jennifer at Desert Mission Food Bank. You mentioned on that monitoring report that it's looking at certain things like backdating and then that part on the bottom, but you said something right before that, before backdating, that
Missing data.
Oh, missing data. That's what it
Mhm.
was. Okay.
So you would have some control over this in that you get to choose what data is required and what data is not. But if something is not required and they're not filling it in, you would be able to see that here. Any other questions before we move forward? All right, we're going to go into the CSFP ethnicity report. If you are running a CSFP program, you are very familiar with the FNS 191. And this report is going to be exactly what you need. So you'll want to be a bit careful with the CSFP ethnicity report because there are 2 of them. One is duplicated and one is unique. For the purposes of the FNS 191, they are looking for unique data. We do have a duplicated one here that would truly just be for your purposes, maybe your curiosity. But if you're trying to get the one or the FNS 191, it must be the ethnicity report unique. So I'm going to go ahead and create this report. It is very simple. You are filling out the bare minimum information here because this report is 100% what the state needs for the FNS 191. So there's not much wiggle room other than the title, if you want to share it with someone, the cycle, and your organizations. That's it. So once I go into reports and report inbox, here is my webinar FNS 191. And it's not too incredibly detailed here. But of course, your data, I'm sure, is going to be a lot more colorful than ours here in the test site. But it's simply going to break down ethnicity as the FNS 191 requires. So here it's asking for the ethnicities, and it's going to show all of the ethnicities in the system, Hispanic or Latino, non-Hispanic or Latino. So you'll notice that when you are adding ethnicity for a client, there is no Latino yes or no option. Latino or Hispanic is going to be an option in all of the ethnicities. So it is important to train your users that when they are adding a user, they need to choose the Hispanic or Latino option in addition to what other races the client may identify as, so that this report is accurate. We'll show that same information in graph, and then it'll show the entire ethnicity report here. Any questions on the FNS 191 or the ethnicity report before we move forward? All right, we're going to move on to the visits to other agencies report. So in reports and new report, it's the visits to agencies report here. This report is great if you just kind of want to see if you have users that are going to more than one agency. So we'll title it, we'll choose who we're sharing it with, we'll choose the date range, the organizations, and the program types. Once again, we've seen this setup before, but this is going to give us some very specific information here. So when I go to my report inbox, visits to agencies report here, essentially what we're going to get is a graph. And if you have all of your clients or all of your neighbors only visiting one agency and not going to more than one agency, when I would read this report, I would see a line kind of going diagonally down with numbers greater than 0. So this is how we read this report. We've got all of our agencies on the X and Y axis or across the left and across the top here. And it is asking us how many clients visited this agency as well as this agency. So of course, clients should be visiting agency A, also visited agency A. We expect to see some numbers there. We also expect to see some numbers clients that visited agency B, also visited agency B. So as I stated, we're going to see a line of numbers going diagonally across, and that is to be expected. But let's say that we see a significant amount of clients visiting agency E and agency D. This could mean a few different things. It could mean that there is a program offered at one of those agencies that is not offered at the other, and they have a great referral system. It might mean that these two agencies are very close to each other in address, and clients kind of pick and choose which one they go to depending on how long the line is or something like that. What this report will not show you is the individual client that went to more than one agency. It won't show you if a client went to 3 agencies, but it will simply show you common trends between 2 agencies. So it's not really going to give you a ton of information that you don't know. What it may do is confirm a hunch for you or maybe help you determine if your referral system or something like that is working as you intend. Any questions on the visit to other agencies report before we move forward? All right, I am going to go into the bulk report. So the bulk report is going to be specific to bulk programs. We're definitely using client-facing programs where you're putting in all of the client information. The bulk programs work as tickers where you're essentially collecting adults, children, seniors, or other identifiable markers without client identifiable information. So I'm going to go into the bulk program report. We have our title, who we're sharing it with, the following cycle, the date range, the organizations, and the program types. We've definitely seen this before. So I'm going to go into, my new report, into my report inbox here. And we're going to look for bulk report. I have a feeling y'all sometimes find the title before I click on it. But this is going to give us very specific information. So we do have a financial assistance program, or at least someone created it, but it doesn't look like it either had been used for the time period or had been tested out yet here. So we also have that meal program, which we saw earlier in the generic report. It's going to show us the agency that's using it, the amount of adults, children, or seniors, and then the total. Same for the bulk service report. looks like it was a report that's created but hadn't been used during the time period that we've chose. And then it's going to break it down by type. So if we had also had these other programs use, this would be more than one line, and it would break it down by the adult, children, and senior markers. So this is another one where the section titles are going to be different from organization to organization, as that is going to determine what what programs you're using, and how it shows up in this report. Any questions on the bulk report before we move forward? All right, we are at 2 minutes to the hour. I have gone over everything that I wanted to go over with you today, with the exception of one report, which I always save for last because it is not very commonly used, but that is the social services report. If you are interested in that one, I recommend popping onto our YouTube channel. A previous recording does have that social services outcome report. But with the remaining 2 minutes that we have left, are there any questions that I can answer for you about any of the reports that we've gone over, or perhaps something specific that you are looking for that I can help you with determining a good report for? All right, thank you everyone for joining. Please do check out our YouTube channel for previous recordings of this webinar, as well as many other helpful topics. Within a week's time or less, you will be able to see today's recording on the YouTube channel as well. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care.